Hello, my name is Brock Coles, and I'm going to be talking to you about ideas. Been with the Coke company for 8 years. I work in global R&D, and I work in external technology acquisition. After the first year was done, they asked about starting an open innovation program. For the last 7 years, that's what we've been building, is a program around open innovation to support our 6 global R&D centers. And we now have 9 innovation hubs where we source technology, and thousands of associates that know who we are and how to access us to help find solutions on the outside that we can bring in to solve the needs we have inside the company. And one of my personal passions has always been about ideas. Not necessarily what the idea is, but what makes a good idea from a bad idea. And how would you know it was a good idea or a bad idea before you invested time in pursuing it? I hope to sort of tell that little story about the first time you have that idea, maybe before you jump into it, you back up a little bit, maybe think about if it's the right idea, get it into the right form, and have a little bit more success on the other end. I'd like to start with a question and ask, has anybody ever had a great idea? Thought that their idea was just fantastic and that there was exactly on the spot. Perhaps maybe driving home in the car, perhaps sitting at your desk, perhaps being in a startup weekend where ideas were fluid. Ideas can come from everywhere. We all have ideas, and everybody sees great big opportunities with the ideas. It's not uncommon, and I have been there myself, to immediately think about how your idea can be translated into value, how that you can take your idea, that you can scale it real quick. It's going to be the easiest solution. Everybody's going to want it. All you really need to do is get 1% of a market, and you've got unlimited potential to go to. Am I correct, right? This is exactly how it works, right? The reality is, though, that most ideas fail. That you can take an idea and you can try to get it to a commercial market, but the chances of getting there are very low, very, very low, for lots of reasons. Some of them may be self-inflicted reasons. Some of them might be the fact that it just wasn't that great of an idea. So this particular issue, this idea failing issue, and trying to make better ideas has really been kind of a passion of mine for almost 20 years now. Just trying to think about when somebody approaches you and they say, I have an idea, how would one find out if it was really a good idea and if it was really going to be successful before we started the journey, right? So I'm here today to really talk about how can we collectively increase the odds of success with your ideas. How can we take what you've generated at that startup weekend? How can we take what you've generated while you were driving home on 400 in traffic, thinking of better ways that the traffic lights could change? How would we pressure test that thinking and expand those ideas and capture them in a way that we could go to market more successfully? Right? So I'd like to take you back. This is 1992. This is one of my favorite pictures of my dad, who has now passed. We're actually sitting at Gulfstream Park down in Florida at the horse races. Of all the places, I have never have guessed that my passion for ideas would have originated at a horse race. But for some reason, my dad and I, as I grew up, we lived in different states, and this was a common story that we had, that we would try to pick the winning horses of horse races. It started out very innocently. We would get the LA Times, we'd open it up, we'd make our selections, and then we would test each other the next day, and then it got very sophisticated. You can see we have computers out and algorithms and hours on the phone talking about what made a good horse and what made a bad horse. And I could form this analogy between good ideas and bad ideas, and how what we were really doing back then was kind of my initial step into innovation and really thinking about choices and how you make choices, right? So if you've ever been to the horse races, this is kind of a sheet that you get, right? It's got the horses listed out on there, and they have lots of statistics. They'll tell you everything from how much they weigh to who's riding them to how fast they ran, all sorts of information, more statistical information than you would ever want. My dad and I, both being technical, thought this will be the easiest thing ever to be able to pick winners and get rich, right? everybody can do it. We can write computer programs and whatnot. Well, we spent 10 years trying to pick winners. We learned the hard way that if you only pick the best horse, one horse in the race, you have a very low chance of winning, much like ideas. If you pick the favorite in the race all the time, you win more often, but you have a very little chance of making a lot of money. Both of those strategies tend to be losers, right? This particular picture kind of shows how the horses finish a race. And to me, it's kind of an image of a stage gate process at a company where you've got lots and lots of ideas competing for one goal line, one funding, one ask, one opportunity, one to go. But as you can see here, there are so many opportunities, so close. And a company can't really pick the winner. You can't really tell the difference between the 2 and the 5 and the 7 and on and on. For 10 years we tried, and I'll tell you it can't be done. But then we hit on it, right? Instead of trying to pick the one idea that was the best on the list, instead of finding the one horse that was slightly better than the other horses, we began to look for the losers. All we did was just cross off the horses that couldn't get there, right? We were absolutely sure that this one wasn't going to make it. We took it off the list, and we began to bet on bundles of horses, right? We didn't care really who won the race. We just didn't want a particular one to be on there. And it was funny, we would be at the horse track and you would be next to somebody and they would be looking at the computer just like the gentleman was in the picture there, and he would ask you, right, what are you going to bet on? What are you going to bet on? And we would say, well, we love the 4-horse. We're going to bet on the 4-horse. And he says, I love the 4-horse too. And off to the windows we would go, right? The race would start and the gentleman would be cheering for this 4-horse to come in the front and win the race. We would be cheering for the 4-horse to be anywhere else on the field but in the front, right? He just needed to lose because what we were really betting on was all of the other horses to get there, right? So for a number of years, all the way back early on, I've seen horse racing as kind of a parallel to idea creation, right? And taking ideas and visualizing them in much a different way. Instead of seeing a single idea as something that we should do, I see it as really a starter idea. Maybe just an opportunity to explore an area. It doesn't have to be a great idea, it doesn't have to be a bad idea, and it might be the best idea at the end of the day, but we don't know. So I think of this starter idea and have developed some strategies to begin to build a whole array of ideas around here. So now it's an ecosystem of ideas, right? It's not just about what the one idea was, but maybe how the one idea can work in many different ways. And then, just like in the number of horse races, we go through and eliminate the ones that we think are the worst ideas and create a bundle now, much more than one, of the opportunities that we think have the best chance of winning, thus improving our chances of being very successful, right? So for a long time, this was the strategy and this was the work. On the sidelight, I do a lot of patent work and I've had a chance to meet inventors, and you could always get to this destination, no problem. But it wasn't until I came to the Coca-Cola Company and I understood open innovation, right? It's a concept that was born maybe 10, 12 years ago with Dr. Henry Chesborough, and it basically says there's different ways to do innovation. You can't necessarily do everything inside your company. There's just not enough resources, and you can't grow fast enough, right? So his proposition was that you would crowdsource. You'd build networks in order to be able to get the best information that you could, find the best capabilities and the best technologies, and then you would go to market in completely different ways. Some of the opportunities you would build internal, other opportunities you would build with partners. And I said, aha. Now I sort of have the missing piece in this whole idea of bringing ideas together. I can take a starter idea and I can create it into an array of ideas. I can bundle the best of the ideas into different opportunities, and then I can use some open innovation strategies to feed some of the opportunities into our own development pipeline here, and then to send some of the opportunities to companies that would be outside. I'd like to give you a story as an example of the process. These are two of my friends. You might recognize them. It's Frankie on the left and Jason on the right. Yep, left and right. These two are running the accelerator, David Butler's group that Ross Kimball oversees in Sydney. I had a chance to meet them when they were here in Atlanta on a couple of their visits, and then I had a chance to meet them when I was traveling in Australia. They had an idea that they called iHydrate. They envisioned this as a band that would go on to somebody's arm, and that it would tell you how much water was left in your body and when you were going to be thirsty. This is where they were starting with. They didn't necessarily know how the destination was going to get there, but they knew at Coke that we did hydration and that a band for hydration wasn't out on the market. And so this became their vision, their starter idea. So we had an opportunity to visit with them and do some crowdsourcing, going through the process. We took this idea and we began to look out on the internet. And one of the favorite techniques I have is looking at other people's PowerPoint slides. PowerPoint slides that are online, that are publicly available, that begin to give you some trends and some insights into what other people are saying about technology, what other people are envisioning the future is going to look like, the vocabulary that they're using to describe these things. And so we went through and we collected probably 100 different PowerPoint slides, and we began to extract from them just key nuggets about how people were going to wear technology and how chronic health people were going to be in play. And we learned that they envision technology to be sewn in our clothing, and that it just won't be about armbands, but it could be on your body, it could be in your pocket. The functionality, the play on words, you see they talk about software and they change the word to software, W-E-A-R, right? Just these little subtleties that are in there. We learned that one of the biggest opportunities for this iHydrate band will come in medicine, where some predict that 80% of the doctors will be replaced by devices that essentially let you create what they call a domestic diagnosis, that you can do it yourself at home to figure out what's wrong with you, at least as an initial step, right? But we went through, we picked these out, and we began to then connect the dots, right? We could lay out on charts all of the trends and insights that we began to see. Remember, our objective here is to take their single idea and to create an entire array of ideas, an ecosystem of opportunities for this one technology. We then were able to take these trends and these insights, and we felt like if we selected the trends that had a great chance of being successful, and we paired them up with real insights that were helping consumers, that we would have a higher probability of success on those ideas. But the one missing piece in all this is once we had a foundation and an understanding of how consumers would be using these technologies and in which markets that they would be the best to go at, we had no way of really linking them to the business, right? We had to generate ideas that could help derive revenue that our company could recognize as an opportunity. So what we did, and we do this a lot in our external technology group, is we reach out to our subject matter experts. We have one of the most in-depth arrangement of people in every culture, category, technology area, and we began to assemble a roster of people who we could give these different trends and insights to, and we could specifically ask them about what were the big concepts that would begin to drive changes in the way our business would work. They came back and they gave us 7 concepts. And so now I have taken the one single idea and I have grown it into 7 concepts that were integrated together into an ecosystem. They came back with the personal hydration wearable itself, the types of sensors that they needed in there, the algorithms. We learned that one key caveat for the Coke company would to be not only tell you how much water is in your body, but to predict when it would run out and then help you find that beverage while you were on your run at the same time, right? Connecting it. But then we learned that the platforms we already have in place can be leveraged. For example, the MyCoke Rewards platform could easily be extended to provide loyalty, where now groups and clubs could use their bands to gain loyalty points and advantage. We knew that this was also strategic to a lot of competitors, and that perhaps we could come up with a hydration portal of some kind that we could export and we could plug into other people's back ends, right? So this led us to think about new integrated models. of immediate consumption, right? Now that people were wearing their bands and they were out and active and they were thirsty, that there would be new ways to buy. That gone might be the buying soda at one time, and it might look more like your mobile phone where you were subscribing to it monthly and you could stop by and get a drink when you were there. And it was all integrated together, and there were all different types of models that we could build around that. And then we worked with our Global Technical Engineering Council, right? This is the group of bottlers who can provide us key insights as to how they see these technologies working. And they said, hey, this could be a new type of sensor for us, where the consumer was the last sensor in line. It would be forward-looking, and if we could understand how the consumer was interacting with our package at the very end, this might help us in brand new logistic ways on how we move our products along. And then we wanted to play nice with all the devices. We wanted to make sure that if they weren't going to wear our wearable hydration, that perhaps our back-end platform could support their needs, or that our payment could be used to sell our products. So we began to see interconnections between all of the devices that were coming to the markets and avenues and opportunities that we could do. We also then looked at it from a global community perspective, right? That we may want to have clubs earn points in one country and share the rewards with those in other countries. The global outreach in the community, the thinking larger, the social interaction that was going on. And then finally, it was about delivery at home. If you know that people are active and you know what they're doing, right, how can we learn about what they're doing and preemptively provide those products to them and make those recommendations? So we had taken the one idea and we had expanded it into 7 concepts. And then when we got into idea harvesting, and this is very similar to what we do here with brainstorming, but instead of just brainstorming random ideas, we had focused them all into 7 areas that we knew were really well connected to the business. And we generated 70 ideas out of there. So now the one idea with iHydrate, right, became 7 concepts that were closely linked to the business, how we could generate revenue that the company would recognize. And then we expanded those into 70 different opportunities, right? This is the collection of horses that are out there, right? To tie it back, we have identified now our world of possibilities. So then the trick becomes narrowing them down, right? Whittling out the losers and bundling up the different categories. So what we ended up doing is we take the 70 horses, and we've learned over time that we can part and we can divide and we can debate and we can take small ideas and make them better, and we can combine 2 ideas into bigger ideas. But ultimately what we're doing then is we're reducing our choices down to several different categories. As an example, in the iHydrate, we used one category for competitors. We thought, here's a group of companies. Perhaps some of our ideas would be of value to them, right? Instead of them going off and thinking about hydration or wearable devices around hydration, what if we could use certain of our ideas that we would export out to those companies, and so they would become partners instead of competitors? Then there were some of the ideas that we thought, well, these are very close to the vest. We're going to have some new sensor technologies, and this would be the stuff that we would like to spend our money on, right? So what we ended up doing is we created these bundles, right? And in order to own these bundles, we put them into patent applications, right? This converts these raw ideas into something that we own that we can then merchandise. We don't have to build the product. We can just own the concepts, right? Then comes the market approach, and this was, to me, the eye-opener when I joined Coke and we began with the Open Innovation Program. It had always been easy to get to this point in one way or another to figure out what you wanted to do. But to really be able to think about how you would bring ideas into the company in what's called kind of an outside-in method, which is very traditional to what we do today, right? We think of concepts, we bring them into the company, and we develop them. But to then augment that with a strategy of being able to take the bundles from inside the company and find partners on the outside. Now we have really diversified our risk. We've spread it around. We have other people spending their time and their money working with our ideas to help our ecosystem of solution. From a startup perspective, we have selectively chosen which of the opportunities we would like to pursue internally, right? The family jewels, if you will. And then from a strategic position, we have thought about which of these opportunities that we want to maybe give to partners, to work with suppliers, to find other avenues that we can generate opportunities with. So I'd like to finish and just say, next time you have an idea, don't think of it as your only idea. Just think of it as a starter idea. What you really want to do is you want to avoid the pitfalls of getting started with a project and getting too far along and realizing that there may be other solutions. That ultimately taking your starter idea and going through a workshop and expanding it into a collection of ideas and using some tools of bundling in order to get some patentable ideas, and then thinking about an open innovation approach to the market will diversify your risk, increase the odds of success of your technology, and at the end of the day, it'll really help you make the money that we're all looking for, whether it be in our own ideas or whether it be in big ideas that we have in the company here. Thank you.
Great job, Rob.